Hi, Stitchers. Welcome to Tatreez Talk, where we share conversations about Palestinian embroidery. I'm Amani here with my co-host Lena, chatting with talented embroiderers and artists, sharing their stories, inspirations, and the cultural significance behind their work.
On today's episode, we're bringing back two of our previous guests to host a roundtable discussion around the importance of cultural appreciation versus appropriation. How can non-Palestinians engage with Tatreez in a respectful way?
Of course, as Lena said, we are really excited to welcome back our guests, Eman from Hint of Tatreez and Bayan from Bayan Collective. Welcome back to both of you. Bayan, you're now a third time guest. Eman, this is your second time. You guys are like VIPs. Ahla sahla.
Ahlin, and we're so glad to be back. At least I am. I'm so glad this is literally the third time, like you said. So I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm also very happy to be back and having this discussion with you guys.
Yeah, we have a lot to
Amazing.
talk about.
Yeah, we had to kind of pause. We had to actually record before getting into this because there is lots to talk about here. So obviously this conversation isn't new, but we did decide to have this conversation together after the topic of non-Palestinians teaching Tatreez came up. So let's maybe start there. Can each of you share what inspired you to begin teaching Tatreez and how you view its significance in preserving Palestinian culture? Maybe Bayan, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yes, what inspired me to teach Tatreez? I feel like I started like a few years ago. I think I was one of the first, not the only, but one of the first to really kind of start teaching workshops. And for me, I was just really inspired by that time in my life. Tatreez had kind of come back into my life very organically. I don't know if everybody knows, but I've been practicing Tatreez for about 12 years. And then I took a break to get my master's from the University of Chicago. So there was like this small incubation of like 2 years or almost like 3 years where I didn't practice Tatreez. And then I believe around 2021, all of these like, I think everybody around that time can kind of attest to this, like something was in the air and it was so palpable. And for me, it was just something was just calling me to pull all my old Tatreez projects out that I thought I was like completely done with. I wasn't going to practice again. And I pulled them out again. And then I started going to my aunt to kind of upgrade some of my skills and to learn how to use voice canvas and all of these like new tools about traditional embroidery and things like that. And at the same time, I also held one of my very, very first workshops. And then a few other months go by, and I held my second workshop, my third workshop. And then all of my friends were just, inviting me to come to their communities. And I was just like, oh, it wasn't anything super huge. I was just going to do a workshop every once in a while. And then one of my friends suggested starting kind of like proactively reaching out to people. And I was like, you know what? I think this is something that I truly find a lot of joy in, no matter how much planning, and I'm sure Iman, you can kind of relate to this too. Like no matter how much planning you do before the workshop, you just come alive when you're doing it. And that to me was just like a testament to how much I love what I do. And so I just kept going with it. And then, as you guys know, I launched the summer tour, I think in 2023. And then that really just kicked us off. We did a national tour and then I just kept going after that. Alhamdulillah. We did another spring tour. And then now we just take regular requests for workshops. And so that's kind of how my journey ended up panning out.
How about you, Eman?
I would say I have a lot of similarities with Bayan's story, but my teaching journey is, I would say, twofold. So I've been practicing Tatreez for similarly about 12-ish or so years now. And actually in 2020, as we all know, we were all sitting around at home. It's nothing to
COVID.
do and COVID. And I started doing Tatreez more. And I've always been sharing my work online. I sew also, so I used to like share my sewing online. And when I started sharing my Tatreez online, people would like ask me, always like come into my DMs and ask me, how did you learn? Where did you learn? Where do you buy supplies? How can I learn? What should I buy? Like, where do you get patterns? Like, it was all these questions about Tatreez. And I had like an answer saved for like just to send to people of like, check out this book, watch this video. go here, buy this. Like I had all these like things, and then as like, we're just sitting at home and I don't know how to sit still. I don't know if that's something about me when I have like time off. It's not like ever time off. And I was like, you know what? I should do something with this where like I can teach people. So I decided to start making Tatreez kits, and I did the instructions. I took all the pictures, and it was like very much so a passion project at that time and just something to keep me busy. And then I got pregnant, so I kind of like held off. But long story short, I launched my Tatreez kits. And again, it was just kind of a passion project. I didn't think much of it. Like I thought, you know, I would get like someone interested here or there, but it actually went really well. And
Mhm.
it really motivated me to keep teaching in that capacity. So I did more kits and I would like share online and things like that. And it like what always motivated me was people's excitement and willingness to
Yeah.
learn Tatreez. And it was just like me knowing that I could pass on that skill to other people that maybe are not privileged enough to have learned from their elders. Because as we know, like Tatreez is usually passed down from like grandmother to mother to daughter, and it's like a very um communal like skill that's taught. Like a lot of us don't have the opportunity to learn that way. So for me, it was very exciting to see Palestinian women like really embrace their culture in that way and learn Tatreez. And then naturally, I wanted to start doing in-person workshops here, specifically where I live in San Diego. And the reason being, I just like I didn't know anybody that was teaching Tatreez in person. And a lot of times it's a lot easier to learn in person. It's nicer. You get a community of people, you can ask questions, you can share skills, and you can make friends. Like I'll touch on that in a little bit, but like that was one of the biggest like shocks to me is like how many friendships were made from my classes. So, and not only myself, but just the students in my classes. But basically every time I taught somebody new, it motivated me to do more and more. And yeah, my in-person workshops like really became such a blessing for me. And I have like seen it really like strengthen and grow the city's community here in San Diego, which I like absolutely love and I'm like so grateful for. So yeah, it's if I rewind a little bit, I taught my first workshop, I believe it was, I have to look back, but I think it was like around 2022. And then I did my first workshop and then I felt like, you know what, I still feel like I have a lot to learn. So I took like about a year off from teaching and I like learned more myself. I like strengthened my skills and I just did more and more research on like because I never wanted my classes to feel like just, something that you can learn on your own. Not that I don't know how to explain it, but I wanted my classes to really offer something to people. And my first class, although like the students were wonderful and they all praised it, I just felt like it wasn't my all. I wasn't giving it my all. So I took a little break. And then when I felt ready, I came back to teaching and I've been doing like monthly workshops ever since. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit of my journey with teaching.
I'm gonna do the unusual thing, and Lena, because also obviously you teach as well, and I know you and I have talked a lot about kind of the significance about preserving culture through teaching. So, do you want to share a little bit about what like inspired you to start teaching?
And I'm just going to give the question right back to you, right? I mean, the world
I'll be
knows.
quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, like engaging with Tatreez in my own way by myself in my own capacity is one thing, but then being able to share it with other people really does require kind of that exposure to in-person experiences. And I think that was what I wanted to gain. Honestly, it was actually more of a like selfish way of thinking about it. Like I went into teaching to find out whether or not I would be a good teacher. And it was only through doing it over and over and over again that, I figured out the most number one questions that people are asking, the parts of the process that they're going to have a hard time with. And then every single time I did this, one piece of feedback that I get is thank you so much for sharing the history. Thank you so much for sharing, where this practice comes from and why it matters, why it's meaningful, why there's symbolism in it. And that has been very eye-opening for me, because I don't think that could have happened if it was just someone who was not Palestinian, or someone who wasn't engaging with it in the same way that a Palestinian would just naturally engage with Tatreez. And so for me, that was kind of what snowballed, kind of getting into more and more workshops, and then transitioning to virtual classes and courses online, and thinking about how to have an experience virtually, digitally, where you're not with someone in person. And I think there's value in both. I think it really, there's, like Eman mentioned, not everyone has the ability to learn from their grandmothers, and they also maybe don't have the ability or chance to learn from someone in person. So the virtual option came in that way. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's been so eye-opening in terms of what types of questions people are asking, what they're taking away from the workshop itself, what kinds of feelings they are experiencing as they engage with needle and thread in a more communal capacity, when that is kind of a center of the practice of Tatreez. And so I've noticed that teaching Tatreez is in fact part of the process of preserving the art form. And it's not just about maintaining the technicality of how to do Tatreez. It's also about the stories that you tell, and the experiences that you have, and the feelings that you share with other people. And also, like Eman mentioned, the connections that people are making amongst themselves in that capacity. So for me, that was kind of, what continues to inspire me now in terms of teaching. So Amani, your turn.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it all happened very organically. Like, I never sought out to teach. I never sought out to become a quote unquote Tatreez business. Like, even when I started stitching myself, like, I started designing patterns because, as we all know, I'm not the most traditional galley. And so, I like my style. And so I started making patterns myself because of that. And then people were like, can we buy the patterns? And then it's like, can we get kits? And, so everything happened organically. And even like teaching, all of it has really happened organically. Like, I teach mostly like locally in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've done a few virtual classes specifically for like my photo Tetris stuff and all that. But I always say, like, when I started stitching, I learned via YouTube, via Roba, literally learned technique. And then the moment I had an opportunity to take a class, even though at that point I'd probably been stitching for maybe a year or two, I still took a class, and I took multiple classes, and I still will take classes, because learning, as you said, Lena, the history and the background, that's what makes it stitching versus Tatreez. I feel like, like, that's what changes it, and makes it something different. And I think all of us, we all, as a part of all of our classes, like, we all teach like a bit about the history. Like, I'm sure for most of us, like, a good chunk of our classes is that background and that history, and we'd probably want to teach more if we could. But it's such an important part of learning Tatreez. And Lena, you also said it, like, it's the difference between a Palestinian teaching the class, and like, it is our history, it's who we are, it's everything, it's our entire existence. So it is important for it to be a part of any of the classes that are taught, which, as we've all said, like, it's something that we all do. And kind of pivoting from that, we talked a bit about like what inspires us and all of that, but let's also kind of get into the crux about, like, how do you all feel with, there is this increasing number of non-Palestinians who are hosting Tatreez workshops and teaching Tatreez. They're I'm just let's just jump into that first. How does that make you feel as a Palestinian Tatreez artist, as a Palestinian Tatreez educator? Let's talk about how we feel about non-Palestinians teaching and hosting Tatreez workshops.
And I see that Bayan has gone off mute.
LOL. I was off mute this entire time. I was gonna say I see us all smirking, so I was gonna ask who wants to go first. Listen, I think I will say, there is something to it that is beautiful, because I think the sentiment that everybody is sharing is, we wouldn't have continued doing what we're doing without the community support, without their interest, without their engagement. I always say that, like, a class is made up of like 30 people. If I'm the only one that shows up and the 30 people don't come, it doesn't work. To sustain the momentum that we have over the past 2 years, it gives me chills. Like, I think that that needs to be recognized. And the vast majority, I will say, of my students, I wouldn't say the majority of them, but it's been at least a half-half mix of Palestinian and non-Palestinian. And when a Palestinian walks into my class versus a non-Palestinian, I always kind of start off my workshops with mentioning how each of those two individuals could walk into my class being intentional. And I think, as a Palestinian, like Eman and Lena have mentioned, like, usually we do learn this from like our families. And by virtue of us being in the diaspora, we have been disconnected from that reality. And so, not even just now, but like in the aftermath of 1948, this is how Palestinians were also forced to learn, is in these Tatreez collectives and in these classes, because they've been disconnected. That is a part of the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, is to disconnect them from their people, from their crafts, from their history. And for us, like, Palestinians is like, in Arabic, it's like إحنا شعب الجبارين, like, we're stubborn. We will plant our roots and grow those roots wherever we go. And I think, like, all of us being in different parts of the country, we're able to bring to life this tradition of Tatreez is so beautiful, that we are so far apart from each other. But every Palestinian whose grandma passed away, and it happens very often, by the way, whose grandma passed away and they didn't have an opportunity to learn, who, like, they're the only Palestinian here and the rest of their families overseas, or like their mom just doesn't know how, but their grandma did, but their grandma's overseas. Like, there are so many stories like that. And every single Palestinian that walks in has every single right to learn this and to reconnect and to, like, put that plug back in to their grandma, to that 1948, and to keep going. And so I think that is like something super beautiful and magical about what we can do and offer through these workshops and for our community, and how Palestinians can be intentional. And I think when non-Palestinians walk into our classes, they're also like engaging and learning about Palestinian history. And there is a unique lens to Tatreez in how someone can learn about the Palestinian cause in a different way than in the political realm or in the research realm, or like, in the boycott realm. Yeah, this is the creative world. And this is like a nice way to pull people into our cause. And I think that is the defining element, is, are you, considering the Palestinian cause? Are you connecting Tatreez to its history, or are you only practicing the art? And I think that connection, if Palestinians are doing it, we are seeking this out because we've been so deprived of it. Like, if we are seeking that connection out, and as a actual literal lifeline, like a literal lifeline against our own ethnic cleansing, I need to reconnect with my people, with my art. Non-Palestinians coming into the space, it's by far been like a very beautiful engagement with it. But if a non-Palestinian does come into this space, and it is rare that it happens, but they come in and they rip that disconnection apart, that connection apart, I feel like, what does that say about their contribution to our ethnic cleansing or to our preservation of our craft? So it's just about being intentional with how you approach Tatreez. It's about being intentional with how you approach a Palestinian artist. And that goes when you walk into the classroom and when you walk outside of the classroom as well. How do you uphold what you learned? How do you continue your practice of Tatreez? Are you loud about your support for Palestine? And if you do hold a Tatreez circle, and I think this is something I want to hear everybody else's opinion on too, is, you know, are you pulling in another Palestinian artist or a Palestinian in your organizing? Are you making that direct effort to make that connection between art and people? Are you selling things, which is a huge conversation that I know we're going to talk about?
Whew.
And most importantly, are you taking what you learned in class, whether it's certain motifs or whatever, are you using that Palestinian artist, let's say, resources, and using them without them knowing for your own gain? And so there's all these conversations that I think we need to have just around the general etiquette of how someone can approach someone. And the last thing I'll say is I want to be clear that like the majority of non-Palestinians, like I never differentiate between someone in my class who's Palestinian and non-Palestinian. I don't even notice because the majority of people are super gracious. Like it's never apparent unless someone obviously is like, I'm Palestinian. I'm from so and so. Where are you from? Because we need to make our presence known as Palestinians. But I think the majority of people are gracious. It's just like this conversation around guidelines and the general etiquette of how to approach Tatreez and specifically Palestinian artists too that we're gonna have. But I want to hear what you guys have to say too.
So my biggest thing that I want to like also like share on top of basically what you're talking, the thing that you said that really stuck out to me that I'm really passionate about is, are you finding Palestinians in your orbit, like you mentioned? Are you finding the Palestinians? Because here's the thing, we are around, we have our arms raised, we are very vocal, like you can find us, and I bet you we're probably in your locale.
Yep.
So that's the part that really like so this is like just an example. It's not Tatreez specific, but it was because I was doing a Tatreez workshop at a conference, and the conference was about, you know, education and English education in the US. And this woman had had a panel on bringing more Palestinian voices into the classroom. And her example was a collection of short stories written by Palestinians in Gaza. This woman had a panel on bringing Palestinian voices into the classroom, and there was not one Palestinian person
Shocking.
present. And the only reason that she got away with this panel is because she's not Palestinian, because all the other Palestinians who applied for similar conversations or whatever to be present were all rejected because they had the words Palestine or Gaza. But because she's not Palestinian, she had like the ability to be there, and she had the opportunity to actually bring Palestinian voices. And this is the same thing with Tatreez. Like if you are going to be teaching Tatreez or having a circle, or you want to bring it to your university or to your community, reach out to one of the Palestinians that you see, because there are plenty of us and we are all very excited to bring Tatreez to you. And we believe that it is, like you said, Bayan, it's like it is a tool for the resistance against what's happening in Palestine currently and in the past. So that's the part that I feel very passionate about, and I think needs to be just super highlighted.
Yeah. No, I completely co-sign that. And I will go as far as saying, like, if you are not Palestinian, you 100% should not be teaching and leading a Tatreez workshop. Now, as Bayan has said, as Lena said, 100%, if you are non-Palestinian, ahla sahla, you are welcome to enjoy and appreciate the culture, become a part of the culture, engage in the culture. But also, as Lena just said, if you don't know any Palestinians, if you don't know enough Palestinians to know that you should not be engaging with our culture in unethical ways, then I need you to first start by actually making Palestinian friends. As Bayan said, like most of the non-Palestinians who come to all of my classes, who engage with my work, who reach out, who support whatever, they get it. Like yeah, they're not the people that need to hear this message because I feel like they understand it. But there are far too many people who, let's give them, I'm going to give them the grace to say, like, I think most people mean well. I genuinely do think that most people who do this mean well. They just don't know. Like I had somebody who, and I'm not trying to call this person out at all because they actually like engaged in such like inappropriate way with this, but like I had posted something not that long ago about this subject on social media, and someone reached out to me and said that they are non-Palestinian, and they've been hosting Tatreez classes. They have not made a profit. They donate every single penny to like mutual funds and like mutual aids and all that stuff. And they were like asking me like my thoughts on it all. And I said, look, you should find a Palestinian to host those classes. And just kind of like, that's what it is. Like, it is what it is. And she was super gracious, completely understand. Thank you so much. Like, I did not realize yada yada, and that was done. That's how it should be. Like, that's the appropriate way to address it.
Yeah.
Like, no one needs to be like, shamed in town square or anything like that. But Yani, if you're doing something that you don't realize is inappropriate and someone's addressing you and letting you know it's inappropriate, take that L and just be like, my bad, and keep it pushing. Like that's my piece on it.
Yeah, I think it's also important for people tuning into this to understand like where this conversation is coming from too. And like you said, Amani, like who specifically we are addressing, because and I think this is what you touched on too a little bit, Lena, in terms of that one panel that you were talking about. But this entire conversation is also really just how to be a good ally. And I do
Mm-hmm.
think that there are some people who are so in tune to it and who are so gracious, and they do every single thing to make sure that they are approaching this craft respectfully and with honor. And like we actually do need that. Like we actually do need non-Palestinians to engage in this. We do need non-Palestinian allies. Like we need that. I think everybody knows that. I think it's just the difference between there's this line where Palestinians are at the forefront. We are literally at the beginning of that line. We're the first line of defense. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring all these non-Palestinians up to speed back. We are all the way back there. Come on, it's been 76 years. Like we need to bring you guys back up here and to really kind of like be with us shoulder to shoulder. But I think where it comes to like some where this conversation is coming from is when those non-Palestinians step in front of us. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
wait. We brought you up to speed so you could stand with us, not in front of us. Not, what this exists both, by the way, I've seen this exist in the political realm, not just in the Tatreez world, where non-Palestinians will have the mic. They will. And there's literally Palestinians right next to you, and you continue to speak. You continue to, for
Mm-hmm.
example, wear Tatreez, and not give the mic to the Palestinians that are next to you who are asking to speak. And similarly with the Palestinians, like there are so many. Like I'm sure, like when I started, Eman was already started, Lena, you were already started, even you as well. I mean, I think everybody here, we had already our accounts were kind of like bubbling up in those first couple of years. But I think we can all agree that like we are in a different age now where there's an expansion of Tatreez instructors, there's an expansion of Tatreez circles happening. There is, we are kind of like innovating in our own way, but the community is expanding, and that's so beautiful to see. So like this conversation where it's coming from is at the perfect junction of time that we exist in. Like I don't think if we had this conversation us four and on this episode and released it, you know, December of last year, that would have been appropriate because of what was happening at that time last year. I think what's happening now is we're seeing this stabilization of Tatreez and the Tatreez community. And now we want to sustain that momentum in a way that keeps it alive for years to come. And within that, like sustainability of it, we are having this conversation to um, kind of, again, talk about the etiquette about how these communities can grow and should grow, and how people walk into these spaces as well, because there is an etiquette. As a Palestinian knows, like we have our food, we have our dance, we have our clothing. We're always super hospitable to anybody that walks into our house. We literally will pull people off the street to welcome them in. Um, So you're in a Palestinian's home, you're in someone's home as a guest, or you're being gifted something. It's just a matter of how you treat that gift, how you act in someone's home. That, or that metaphor of the line, if you step in front of that line, I think those are the specific people that we are talking about and addressing. And there's also a lot of things that are unsaid. And so there's, like Amani said, there's a lot of people that don't know. And so that's where this conversation is coming from, is to say this, to know this, so that we all know how to engage better with one another, how I am able to better stand on my own voice and my own 2 feet when a student asks me a certain question about certain things, and I'm like, wait, that's a little bit of appropriation. We need to have this conversation. Well, now we have this backing of like, no, like this isn't just me. I'm not just crazy. This is like how, we can't speak for all Palestinians, but there is a general consensus about what is appropriation and what is not. And also for those students walking into this class to not feel bad. Like, we're not trying to shame anyone, but for them to know, wait, okay, there's an etiquette. Let me just read the guidelines real quick. Okay, got it. I can go into that Palestinian's home. I know how to act. I don't need to be embarrassed. Everything's good. I think this is where that conversation is really coming from.
So I have been just absorbing everything that you ladies have been saying and all your opinions, and really trying to figure out what I want to add to the conversation, because I feel like anything that needs to be said has been said. And I want to just make a point to say to the audience that if you are listening and you're hearing like the passion, the anger, the sadness in our voices, just like Bayan said, none of it is to shame anybody or make anyone feel bad. The reason that there's so much emotion is because our like whole lives and identities are tied to Tatreez, our like existence as Palestinian women, especially. All of it is tied to Tatreez, and I think I can speak for everybody here when I say that like we treat Tatreez and this, we treat our culture with the utmost respect. Like I think take it very, very seriously. At least like I know that when I started teaching Tatreez and even like selling things online, but especially when I decided I was going to teach Tatreez here in my local community, the first thing I did, and I'm not saying like I don't have a rule book to tell people what to do when they're starting anything. I just have my opinions and my feelings and my point of view. I'm sorry if I'm a little sick, so I'm sorry if my voice sounds weird. But the first thing I did before I even thought to host a workshop was I went out looking to see if anybody was already doing it, and especially like if there was already a Palestinian person in my area teaching Tatreez, because the first thing I would have done was approach that person and say like, hey, like I'm interested in teaching, I'm interested in this, that, and the other. Like, can I help you? I had someone actually approach me in that way as well when I started teaching. She said like, hey, like I love teaching, like I don't want anything out of it. Like, can I help you some days? And I was like, sure, like, yeah. And I thought that was so great. So that was the first thing I did. And again, I'm not saying like, who am I to tell you what to do? But I'm just saying from my point of view, that was the first thing I did. And the reason I did that is because especially when I started teaching before, and I'm going to be really frank, like before October 7th, there was like, I would say a fraction of people interested in even learning anything about Palestinian culture. It is what it is, it's just the reality. So when I hosted my first workshop, there weren't really that many people that I could find that were interested in learning. Like I had a pretty small class. And so the last thing I wanted to do was to take away from somebody who had been doing the work for years and just like show up and be like, well, here I am, I'm teaching, and like my class is going to be cheaper than yours, and I'm going to take all your, people. So that was the last thing I wanted to do. So I looked, I couldn't find anybody, there was nothing going on. And I would have known about it because I was already so like entrenched in like the community and always looking for classes and things like that. So I saw that there was a void. I saw that it was something, you know, that I could contribute to my community. And I paired up with House of Palestine in Balboa Park, if you're familiar with San Diego. Basically, they do amazing work. So you know, a portion of my proceeds of my class go to supporting the work that they do in the community. And I'm really proud of like the work that I do with them. And it's a lot of work. It just is, like, you all know, teaching one class, I have to show up if 20 people sign up or if 3 people signed up. And it's the same amount of work. To me, it is. And I put a lot of research into my classes. I put a lot of thought and effort. And I'm always, the number one thing on my mind is people are paying and taking time out of their day to come listen to me, someone they don't know.
100%.
How can I provide the best of the best for them? Like,
Mhm.
it means a lot to me that somebody would even, like, you guys don't even know. Like, before I started like really doing Tatreez online and things like that, I was like selling like dresses that I would make and whatever. And I like sometimes never wanted to charge people. Like, that's, as an Arab, like taking money from somebody is like the hardest thing. I feel like you want to just be like gracious and charitable and just like what's the word? Like, always share with people. And I feel like that's just in our nature. So when someone comes and spends money on like a service that I'm providing, I I take it really seriously. And that's why I took a break. Like, I did my first class and I left feeling like a little bit, you know, uneasy about it. I felt like I didn't focus enough on the history of Tatreez, and I didn't focus enough on the culture. I was really just focusing on the technical aspect and just like the how-to of Tatreez. And the reason was because I was scared to mess up, to give like the wrong information. And I feel like it all goes back to just really having a deep-rooted respect for the craft, for the culture, for the history. And so when I say all this to say that I know, and I know that you guys feel the same. I just know, because when you're an artist or a creative person, um, we all think the same. Like, I know when I put so much thought and work, you know, whether it's in a class that I've crafted or a pattern or a product, whatever it is, even like a post on social media, I put so much work and effort and I know what went behind it. When I see someone come in who is like clearly disconnected from the culture, just kind of, you know, as Palestinians, we're so used to people co-opting our culture, in every aspect, whether it's clothing, music, food, just our existence, like only talking about Palestine when it's quote unquote relevant, when there's a tragedy happening. And that, you know, it's just been it's been super apparent. Like, it's been something that I've noticed, and I know you've all noticed. And so you asked in the beginning, how does it make us feel? I don't know. Some days it's sadness, some days it's anger, some days it's a little bit of like, um, even I guess I would say like being proud of the work, but and just knowing that it's like resonating with people. So it's always changing. Again, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, what not to do. People are gonna do, you know, there's no actual rule book. Like, people are gonna behave in the way that they want. But it's just more so that I want people to remember that maybe something that is a trend to you, or something that you just, you know, picked up one day and found interesting because it was pretty. You know, I have plenty of crafts that I do all the time and hobbies that I get into that I love, and I would never think to like make a whole business and teach people, even if I feel like really, you know, like, because I have no reason to, like, even with sewing. Like, I've been sewing my whole life, not my whole life, my whole like adult life. And I think I'm pretty good at it, but I have like no connection like to it. And I'm not saying that like, if, you know, I have to, but if you I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you are pouring like time and energy into something that you don't like really have a connection to in general. That's just my opinion. People, you know, lots of people would disagree because of capitalism, whatever. But my opinion
The
is like,
way
yeah,
you said that.
yeah, it just is like not everyone has to like connect with the work they do. I get
Yeah.
that. It's like a privileged thing to say even, and I totally understand. But when you're talking about not only someone's culture, but a culture that is actively, like literally actively, being erased and under threat and under occupation, it's like you're not only doing yourself a disservice by getting into, that realm, but you're doing those, Palestinians a disservice as well. And what I mean is just taking away opportunity from them by like hosting your own workshops when somebody else is, making money off of the cause. Even, I this might be maybe I hesitate to say that. I hesitate to say that. I think it could be a whole episode in of itself, but I think a lot of people just hide behind the charity
Yes.
part
Okay,
yes,
okay,
yes, yes.
wait, okay,
Wait, this
Iman.
actually needs
Yes.
to be
Okay.
said.
Yes, yes,
Let's
yes.
talk about
Okay.
that. Let's talk
Literally,
about that.
okay.
Let's talk about
Because I'm the one that brought it up, I want to be very, very clear. I want to be very clear. I think people will be like, "What's wrong with you? You don't like charity?" Of course I do. Of course I do. I think like I've had people say, "Well, like I'm gonna host a workshop, but I'm not keeping any of the funds. Like it's going to charity." And I'm like, okay, cool. Like yeah, that's nice. Like cool again. But I want people to like think for a second. Like first of all, is that all that the Palestinian cause is to you? Like,
It's
is
not. It's
it
not a
is
charitable
it
cause.
I in my opinion, like w- I, you guys can probably put it better than I can, but it's like it just I feel like a lot of people just hide behind it because
Yeah.
it gives them an easy out to be able to do the thing that they want to do.
Mhm.
And it just reduces our cause to just like a charitable, like we're just a humanitarian cause. Like, no, this
Yeah.
is people are like our whole culture, our whole identity, everything is under threat. And it all goes back to the dehumanization of Palestinians. And the more and more we reduce like ourselves to like just a charitable cause, I think it does tie into that dehumanization as well. We're just seen as people in need of help, like,
Yeah.
starving people.
And
Um, yeah, go
it
ahead.
puts us in a position of pity, Iman. Like,
Yeah,
and Palestinians we don't need anyone's pity at all. Um, as business owners in the diaspora, as teachers in the diaspora, as just any Palestinian in the diaspora, or as Palestinians that are on the ground, we are not a shab of people that requires pity. Like we are like a people of honor. Like we stand on that. Like we share our arts and our crafts and our lives. We're not asking for sympathy. We're not asking for pity. We're asking for liberation. And the Palestinian cause is a very much a political one. It's not a humanitarian cause. It's not a charitable cause. Obviously, there are things going on, and specifically in Gaza right now, where there is a famine. But why is the famine happening? Right? It's because Israel is denying food from entering. Right? So for us to um, I think it's just important for people to know because like Iman, you led it up so beautifully with like the amount of time and effort that not only like we do in our work, but I'm sure that a lot of Palestinians do wherever you exist, whether you exist in Palestine, whether you're in the media world, whether you're in law, it doesn't matter where you are. There's so much time and energy and like emotion, like it's an emotional heavy experience, like the amount of work you put in, um, for then someone to come in and to just like just for me, the way that I describe it is it's a feeling of being robbed. It's a feeling of not being appreciated. It honestly sometimes very much discourages me. Sometimes I need to take a step back and be like, wait, wait, wait. Well, I created all of this for people, for the community, and then some people are just kind of like they just kind of burst your bubble in a way,
Mhm.
and so some of that bursting of the bubble is when you host, for example, I think the most common thing, I'm sure this happens to all of us at some point in time, where people will attribute the workshop to charity. And my
Mhm.
favorite thing is when they offer to not pay you enough, but they want to also at the same time send funds to charity. And it's like, we understand that nobody's saying that we don't want to fund Palestine. If you want to fund Palestine, the best way to fund it is directly. But there are ways to fundraise, and like a workshop is a
Mhm.
great way to do that. It is. But at the same time, you're saying we want to support Palestinians, but the artists that we're using for the labor, for the marketing, for the work, we're not even going to compensate them enough. Are
Mhm.
you really supporting Palestinians in their entire capacity? Because to recognize a Palestinian, there is a difference between a Palestinian that's in the West Bank, a Palestinian that's in Gaza, and a Palestinian that's in the diaspora. But to support us as a collective people, there needs to be an understanding about how you approach someone as well. So when charity kind of just gets slapped onto it, it can't be. I think that's the thing. It can't be just
It
slapped
makes it
on.
feel
It
that
needs to
Palestine is a
be
marketing tool. And that's the thing is like
exactly,
Palestine is not a
exactly.
marketing initiative. Like
It needs to be
that
ingrained
is,
in it from the get-go.
yeah. And it's something that has, especially since last October, I've talked to another artist friend of mine who hopefully will have on an episode soon. But
Oh,
we talked a
inshallah.
lot about this, about the idea that like we're constantly expected to do charity. But I think, Bayan, to your point, it's like you need to also make sure that the Palestinian that you're employing is being taken care of as well. And it
Hmm.
is not, it's not like, I don't want people to think that this is like a money, a money thing. It's literally like we
No.
talk about the fact like all the time in every type of industry and every type of work about compensating people appropriately for their labor. And I think also like, Lena and I just did an episode to close out our last season where we specifically talked about the value of Tatreez and, the importance of not devaluing our art, because that in turn devalues our culture as a whole.
Hmm.
And, Iman, I just want to go back to one thing that you had mentioned earlier too, Iman. You had talked about, when you first started teaching, like kind of making sure that there wasn't any other people, any other Palestinians doing it. And if there were, you were going to reach out and you had somebody reach out and all that stuff. And I actually really love what you said about that because I think it goes back to the core of, I think for a lot of us, a big part of Tatreez is the community aspect. You spoke a lot about how you've helped grow your like community in San Diego. Bayan, I know you do a lot of work in the Chicago area, and Lena, I know you've been doing more and more in-person stuff in New York, and like here
Hmm.
in the Bay Area, like I'm not the only person who is building this community.
Hmm.
We have a growing community of people, Palestinian and non-Palestinians,
Yeah.
who are really dedicating themselves to building this community. And I will personally say, like, if you're in the Bay Area and you're Palestinian and you want to start teaching, you want to start like getting into this world, like reach out to me. Like, I'm so happy to like support and stuff. And I think, again, just like emphasizing what Iman said, like, the idea of like working together,
Hmm.
just literally, even if it's just support. I mean, look at all of us, like all four of us are in different parts of the country, like we're all doing different things but that are adjacent. And I will be the first one to say, like, I definitely feel supported and have felt supported by each one of you all.
Hmm.
And like I think that's the most important thing, whether you're Palestinian or non-Palestinian, like being a part of this community means supporting and uplifting each other. If you're not Palestinian, it means, doing a little extra work to support and uplift your Palestinian friends. But even if you're Palestinian, I think it's also an important reminder.
Yeah. And I think one of the main things that I'm hearing, like especially what you just said, Amani, is I think like the main rule of thumb is to just like approach people with grace, like to um like I think there's this notion, there's like this saying, I don't know where I think it's an Arab proverb, not sure. But it's like when somebody comes in to learn something, all of a sudden they think they know everything. But
Mm,
once you continue to learn, you actually realize that you know nothing. And
yep.
so you need to be graceful with yourself and with the people that you're approaching, that you know a drop in an
Mm,
ocean. And so if you know that one drop, that's amazing. That's amazing, but that's just the beginning. You still need to don't jump from 0 to 100. You can't bypass anything. Like I've even had just like Palestinians as well that want to learn and they want to like immediately start selling. And I'm like, that's amazing. I love that. That's a great goal. But you still have to learn this and you have to learn this and you have to learn this and then you can start selling, you know? And you need to go step by step. And like this that goes for Palestinians and non-Palestinians. But
mhm.
people want to jump. We want to jump. We want like instant gratification. And it can't happen. It can't happen. So as like a non-Palestinian as well, it's how are you approaching that one drop? And for Palestinians that already are in this space, that have been in this space for years, that we are hearing how put in a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy into this. It's just the idea of coming in at the end and slapping something on top, or coming in at the end and taking something away. It's that kind of quickness and swiftness and lack of consideration that we are trying to talk about, that I think is the main issue that needs to be addressed. And I think it is addressed by people like slowing down. And Tatriz is a natural healing remedy for that, because it should slow us all the way down, especially in a capitalistic society, and remind us that we are building together, like Amani said, like we are meant to be in community with one another, get to know one another, support one another in the ways that best fit us, and have difficult conversations, which is what this is too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I know we can keep talking, because that's what we do. But we all have schedules and calendars that we need to mind. So I think appropriate way to kind of like wrap up the conversation. We've dropped a lot of this like throughout the conversation, but would love to hear from everyone. What would be your message, honestly, to Palestinians and non-Palestinians, on how to really engage with Tatreez in a way where it's highlighting a cultural appreciation. Bayan, do you want to go first? You're looking at me.
Why am I always the guinea pig?
Because into your stare, you're looking into my eyes. So I'm like, okay, she
Staring
has
into your
something to say.
soul. It's the lighting. It's the lighting. The lighting just like puts me on the spotlight. I will say, I think my main message is always just going to be to approach it with grace. I think if I want to be more specific, it's, I exist in both worlds of like teaching and design. And I think in both cases, it's what someone does with the work afterwards. Because I think most Palestinians, myself included, we'll start off with being like, hey, this is like, well, let's be intentional. And then we welcome into the craft. But I think it's what people do after that that is a testament to whether they heard you when
Mm,
you said, are you being intentional? Or whether they disregard you and honestly, in a way, make you feel used. And that's the one thing that I think is what discourages me sometimes and what makes me feel like I need to take a step back. And I'm sure that many other Palestinian, like on this, in this group and many others outside of this group, can attest to is like, are you being intentional? Are you using that person's materials from classes or their designs without them knowing? And again, like Eman said, with designs, there is some room for inspiration and for you to take that. We don't want to discourage people. This is for Palestinians as well and non-Palestinians. Non-Palestinians is definitely a different conversation about appropriation, but like you can be inspired by someone else's work, but when it's a blatant copying of that work or a blatant taking resources, copying them and using them, I don't think that that's acceptable. I don't think anyone would appreciate that. Anyone that puts time and effort into something would appreciate that. So I think being graceful in that, you know, being encouraged to continue Tatreez is a beautiful thing. You know, just don't bypass the growth. Like you got to still put in the work. You still got to put in the steps. You know, don't jump from 0 to 100 really quickly. And just slow down, appreciate the artist that you're working with, appreciate the art that you've learned, and approach it with the utmost grace that you can. And just, you know, do one step at a time. There's no need to jump. Tattoos isn't going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We're gonna keep the community thriving, and everybody listening is a part of it. Everybody's a part of this community, and we want everybody to be involved, and to come out. It's just a matter of just approaching things very gracefully and respectfully.
I think that my message would be, honestly, I say this with like just a lot of love and care for people. But you don't have to do everything. You don't have to,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be 0 or 100. And as somebody who over the years, I've always dabbled in like many different creative hobbies and different communities. There is this like desire sometimes to, when you start practicing something, to automatically want to monetize it. And I understand it. It's in this day and age, it's hard to just have a hobby that is just taking up your time and not giving you anything, you know, monetary in return. I get it. I get it. I've been there, and I know it's maybe ironic coming from somebody who has like monetized her hobby, but I've spent years and years and years being a consumer of Tatreez, practicing Tatreez, and I didn't just one day wake up and decide like I'm gonna do Tatreez and I want to make money from it.
Yeah.
It was just with like with your journeys as well. It was a natural progression, and it was because I saw there was a void. And I think that's just also good business advice, I think, in any type of field. What's your purpose? Are you filling a void? Are you solving a problem? Are you like really adding value to whatever community? Let's forget Tatreez for a second. Just any community that you're in. Are you like actively adding value, or are you just taking advantage of people's insecurities, people's hardships, you know, a tragedy like with Tatreez? Like really, when it comes to intention, what is your intention behind the work that you do? Like it's for a lot of people, you know, you clock in at a 9 to 5 job, you just follow, you know, orders that you get all day, and that's one thing. You know, you have a disconnect from your job, and you know, I can see that. But when your work is art, and when your work is like your whole, you know, your identity in some kind, like there has to be intention behind it, because it's not simply just you putting out a class or you putting out a product and getting something in return. There is as we talked about in this episode, there's a lot behind it. So really like be intentional with the work that you do. Really, before you do anything, think about the reason, and it's going to help you in the long run. Like not only is it just good community, you know, we talk about community all the time, and not being like an individualistic mindset. And I think community is ultimately what is going to liberate us at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%.
And so we talk about community all the time, but then people are not like putting it into practice when they're doing the work that they're doing. You know, every day of our lives, we're putting energy into, you know, our work, and it's gonna hurt you in the long run, because you're gonna wake up one day and really feel a disconnect from yourself and what you're doing. It happens to everybody. So I think it's just I want people to hopefully have heard the words that we've been saying this whole video, this whole episode, in like a loving light, and it just as a it's all coming from a place of love and care, and yeah, just appreciation for one another, our our talents, our skills, and I think that's what I want people to take away. You don't have to, you can just simply practice Tatreez, enjoy it, support artists.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for being here. Like I said, I know we can probably keep talking and talking and talking about this subject, so maybe we'll do it again later. But again, thank you for opening up and being vulnerable and sharing your thoughts. I know this is it can be a little bit of a controversial subject, and people can be really sensitive about this, but it's important to allow Palestinian voices to be heard on this topic. So thank you both for being here, and I know we'll talk to you guys soon.
Always such a good time chatting with Bayan and Eman, and so fun to have them at the same time. I think one of the things for me that I also wanted to kind of reiterate at the end was, and it came out in everyone's kind of thoughts as they were sharing, but Tatreez isn't just like this nice, pretty, sometimes geometric thing, it has so much meaning, and that's kind of why, that's at the core of why Palestinians feel so strongly about teaching Tatreez, is because we know that it holds our history, it holds our past, it holds our present, it holds our future, it tells our stories. It's our, and especially for us in the diaspora, it's our connection to Palestine as we practice. So for us, it's something that is so much deeper than just like this thing that you see, or this thing that you can wear, this thing that, kind of represents Palestine when you're walking around. Like that's not what it is. It's so much more than that. And I think this goes to both Palestinians and non-Palestinians, that we as a collective need to be more aware of the deeper meaning behind Tatreez. And if you don't know it, step aside because somebody else does know it and they can come share it with the rest. And I think one more thing just before, I hand it over to you, Imani, is I feel like I've noticed this, especially over the last year and a half or so, is that people just like slap a watermelon emoji to like their status and like, oh,
Girl.
I'm resisting, I'm doing something for the Palestinian. Like, no, you cannot just, again, you cannot just slap Palestinian Tatreez to a fundraiser and say you're doing something, or you're doing something huge, or you're doing us a favor. Like, no, that's not what this is. And that is kind of the core of like what we're trying to get at in this episode. But yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think to that point, like, we talked a lot about, for as us as Palestinians who teach Tatreez and participate in Tatreez, why, all the different reasons why it's important to us and all that. And we talked a lot about like the preservation of culture, and I guess sneak peek to another future episode, but there's all the conversation about what is resistance and what role does Tatreez play in it and all that stuff. And at the core for me personally, cultural preservation is a part of resistance. Tatreez is a part of resistance because it's a part of cultural preservation. But exactly to what you were saying, like in the same vein of, you can't just throw up a watermelon emoji. Like you can't just like do Tatreez and be like, I'm resisting. Like, no, baby, no, you're not. Like that's not it. Of course, everyone's gonna feel differently. Everyone's gonna have a different opinion of things. And I think at the end of the day, having the right intentions and talking to people, like have conversations within the Palestinian community, again, whether you are Palestinian or not. And yes, if you are Palestinian, you should still be thinking very intentionally about what you're doing, and why you're doing it. So we'll get off our soapbox for now.
That sounds good. No, I think this has opened up so many more other conversations, which people can look forward to. We'll definitely dive into them later. But for now, thank you guys again so much for listening to Tatreez Talk. We want to hear about your Tatreez journeys, so please share your stories with us at tatreeztalk@gmail.com, and we might just have you on an upcoming episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite listening platform, and be sure to leave a 5-star review. You can follow me at Lina Stob and Amani at Min Amani, and make sure to follow the pod at Tatreez Talk, and we'll talk to you guys soon.